All right, team, welcome back to After Hours. We're going to have an amazing show for you today, so please stay until the end so you can derive all the value from today's show. Maddie, I was telling you before the show, I was going to tell you, like my whole show outline ended up being like 3 different shows, so I had to condense it to one. And there's going to be a common thread throughout the show, and we are hoping to aim what will a Trump presidency, a second term of Trump, look like in 10 to 15 years from now, all right? Will this be a turning point for crypto in America? We're hoping to answer that by the end of the show because there's a lot of rhetoric, a lot of talking out there from people like John Deaton and Brad Garlinghouse. And these are key figures in the crypto industry that are very excited for the new Trump regime. And so we're going to discuss that all in detail today. At the top here, we're probably going to discuss some market, reactions, starting a little bit hot. Bitcoin at $102,000 and altcoins are slightly trailing here. And we're going to maybe discuss some purchasing here. This is After Hours. And before we get into the show here, team, you need to become a Crypto Charge member. Maddie, can you discuss what it means to be a Crypto Charge member?
Yeah, so a crypto charge, guys, like we have a multi-step approach. So obviously we have the baseline education stuff. So I know a lot of you guys come from different, levels of involvement in the market. Some of you guys, this is your very first year exposure. Some of you guys have maybe dabbled for a few years. But either which way, we have a lot of jumpstart resources for you guys to learn about what crypto is, how exchanges work. If you guys are brand new and you're like, what's a limit order? What's a market order? We have resources for that. We have lots of resources for learning about the charts. And then we also do our updates Monday through Friday. This is where we start to kind of get more like, I would say like hands-on with actionable insights. So this is taking a look at the charts Monday through Friday, talking about the macro updates, our expectations with inflation and economic reports and how these things are going to impact the markets. Obviously, a step further than that is taking it into the Discord. So obviously being able to ask questions, communicate with other members. That's really where a lot of the value sits. I would say that I've, obviously through a lot of one-on-one sessions I've done with our members, I say that most people who are not in the Discord, they're at a huge disadvantage. They're basically just leaving a lot of value on the table. But even for some of you guys who don't have a lot of time, we have a lot of other great resources. There's static resources on the website, being the coin library for entries, exits, kind of the overall, meat and potatoes of why we're doing what we're doing. And then of course, we also have our written summary of each episode. So if you guys aren't able to watch each episode, you guys, I know, have the time to read 5 to 7 minutes of what we talked about during that day. So for $49 a month with code YouTube, no reason you guys can't get a lot of value out of it and become a more educated investor and just make better decisions for yourself.
Love that, Maddie. I'm ready to get into the show for today, but Maddie just sparked some off in my brain. I've been closely following a YouTube channel by the name of Bitcoin Academy, and this is a channel ran by a Bitcoin Maxi. And in order for me to combat Bitcoin Maxi arguments, I need to listen to them a lot. So I've been tapping in. He's one of them that I tap in with. And it's so funny, Maddie, because some of these people now, these Bitcoin Maxis, their stance, right? Bitcoin is superior. You can buy Bitcoin whenever. And when I hear Bitcoin, you can buy whenever, that scares me. Because right. Here's 2 options you have here, right? You can land on a channel like us and you hear, hey, be strategic, buy in value zones, all right? Don't deploy all your capital whenever. This other channel is on the complete opposite fence of us, and he'll say things like, take all your money. Anytime I get money, it's all going into Bitcoin. It's all going here. And that scares me. And here's the reason it scares me is because the risk to reward on Bitcoin is not very good now. You're going to see a haircut in 12 to 14 months in Bitcoin. You're going to see it start setting lows, and it's going to enter into a bear market. And people are not resilient enough against that, Maddie. They put in a bunch of money. They put in $100 right now. Let's just say something as $100. It's going to be $40, $50. It's going to be like that in just a couple of months entering the bear market. And then you get deep into the bear market. You're talking about your $100 you invested in the bull run is now $30, $28 because you do see 70, 80, 90% pullbacks in the bear market, right? And so I just want to, it's very important, team. Like I know we've been talking about, strategic buying over the last couple of shows, but team, it matters now more than ever, right? If you're getting into crypto right now, you need people you can rely upon, you can trust. We showed our portfolio last after our shows and showed how we are successful. You can buy crypto without technical analysis, all right? You can be like Michael Saylor and buy and DCA Bitcoin all you want, right? But you have to have a lower time preference for that, all right? You got to be able to look deep into the future and to have that conviction. A lot of people right now don't. A lot of people that even watch the show don't even have conviction into Bitcoin and or crypto or other assets that we talk about, right? They don't even have that conviction, Matty. They like talk about us because we're fun or whatever, and maybe they grab some value, but a lot of them still don't even have that conviction based on the questions I see from you guys, okay? And so if you don't even have that, how are you going to be able to enter into this bull run, buy crypto, and then watch it go down by 70, 80%, which is a Bitcoin Maxi thing? They don't sell at the highs, Matty. They buy now and they hold forever. That's their strategy, right? And so, Matty, I think it's very important to drive home, like, team, we're going to talk about some important things today, but make sure you're being strategic, all right? If you want to do that hands-off thing, it's fine. Go ahead and do it. I'm not an advocate for that because I know you guys are emotional. It's going to kill you. It's going to kill you. Your wife's going to hate you, all right? So don't do it. Matty, anything to talk about with that? Because I was looking in the Discord this morning. I saw some people talk about some Bitcoin Maxi things, and I feel like that was, you just, through that, you kind of like made that pop into my head right here. Is there anything you want to touch on that? Because I feel like it's becoming more and more easy just to say, hey, buy Bitcoin, wait 6 years, or buy Bitcoin and wait until this happens. Or you can take the strategic approach like we are. I'm getting so antsy here. I'm starting to stutter. But seriously though, like there's two ways you could do it here. How should people do it, Matt?
It's one of those things where it's like, just because you have an incredible understanding or an amount of enthusiasm or advocacy for a certain concept or piece of technology or whatever it is, should not negate the absolute necessity for at least some sort of technical, approach to the markets. I mean, obviously, some people are going to think that, because I'm just strictly an altcoin holder, that I hate Bitcoin, and that's not the case. I just have used Bitcoin, right? Like as a raw user, regardless of the investment, and I absolutely hate it, right? Like I've paid upwards of a 2.3% fee and waited over an hour for a single confirmation, right? So like I understand that there isn't this necessarily like massive value with Bitcoin now that we have all of these other DLT models that are vastly more efficient and are much more likely to be, adopted on like, an institutional level, or have more of an ability to be plug and play with software as a service. But no matter what you guys are into, right? Even when it comes to XRP at 250 is not that great of a deal, right? You look at XRP from 250 to $13, it's like a 4.5x, which is great. But it just doesn't offer the same reward, right? So if you guys try to approach Bitcoin the same way you approach the S&P or the Dow or the NASDAQ, you're just not going to see that same reward, right? Because there's way less volatility in the NASDAQ and the Dow Jones and all these different things. Now, of course, market crashes like 2020 kind of really just change our overall perception of like, that type of volatility. But for the most part, it's more of that slow and steady. So you do have really a better like just DCA, forget it, approach over 20, 30, 40 years with those indices. But when it comes to volatile risk on assets, you're really leaving a ton of money on the table by being lazy and not being tactical and not establishing good rules for yourself. So it doesn't have to be, hey, I'm on the charts every day, 4-hour timeframes, 15-minute timeframes. I would say that if you guys even looked on a weekly level once a week and then made some decisions based on kind of those value zones, you would have a much more profitable venture, regardless if it's Bitcoin or anything else, by just identifying on a weekly basis important levels of interest and then being a little bit more aggressive and tactical at those levels. So again, I don't expect you guys to all be day traders. I don't expect you guys all to be on your portfolios 3 times a day. I don't think it's actually healthy sometimes for a lot of you guys to be in your portfolio that many times a day. I think it can kind of, create these emotional turmoils within us. But create a plan for yourself, even if it's Bitcoin, right? Like I know that it's very enticing to follow the whole 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin, $1 million Bitcoin, but like at the end of the day, it's all about ROI, guys, right? And like at the end of the day, this tech is going to keep evolving. Next cycle, there will be new tech that is front and center that is not as important as what we see this cycle, right? Real world assets, maybe a little bit more present, AI present, but maybe not as much as front and center as maybe we see some other verticals. And we don't know what those verticals will look like 3 or 4 years from now. So give yourself opportunity, guys, right? Like if you get a nice profit, take the profit. Give yourself availability next cycle to capitalize on new opportunities, whether it be Bitcoin or something else.
I love that, Matty. Capitalize on the emerging technologies, invest where you can. Don't get too thin. We showed on the last show, Matty, just about our different portfolios here. I think you would even agree with this. The more you get, the harder it is to be able to keep up and get better averages on your cryptos, right? So like, hey, first bull run, keep it short and concise. If you're able, like Matty, where Matty's doing 5 shows a week, he's doing 2 shows on YouTube, he's doing this and that. He's all over his crypto portfolio. If you're doing that, maybe, but hey, make sure you have strong conviction in these assets, because if you fail, you don't want to be like, oh, I don't know. It's like, you're gonna feel like an idiot, right? You're gonna look like an idiot, you're gonna feel like an idiot, and you don't want to be an idiot. All right, let's talk about some altcoin turnarounds, and I kind of want to like this to be like a big beat of the show right here, because we've been talking about some assets that we care about a lot over the last several months, Maddie. And at this point, it is becoming it's closer and closer to where it's like, hey, I'm only in stable coins right now. No more for me. It's like,
Right.
I'm only entering on big pullbacks. Other than that, I'm good. It's becoming more and more like that because my portfolio is doing so well. And the only average I'm trying to keep up with from last show, like you guys saw, was Casper. I want to, bolster up my API3 position. So those are like the two I'm looking at right now. And we're back for another week here, and we see Solana up 15%, we see ETH up 10%, HBAR up 15%, XRP up 17%. So it's like we are always we're getting more and more like that, where it's like we check on a weekly basis, is like, oh, these assets are continuing to go up. At some point, that means, oh, I got to stop buying, right? And so for me, team, API3 and Casper are the purchases I'm doing right now. I might share a story at the end of the show, and how I'm actually doing that. Maddie, what are you purchasing right now?
So I've got a DCA. Basically, it's a three-way DCA, but it's not an equal split DCA. So if you guys watch consistent investor strategy, you guys might see you're like, hey, well, like, why are you not just doing a blanket approach, right? Like, why are you not just doing a blanket DCA? Because a lot of the time, you guys have to look at your personal averages, turn it upside down, and say, like, where is the help needed the most? So technically, with API3, I'm right around break even. So if I really wanted to, I could probably back off the API3 DCA if I wanted to. But I don't want to. Right. I really like the risk to reward ratio. I like the market capitalization, and I like having the vertical exposure, because otherwise, if I wasn't API3 right now, I'd probably be building a link position. But I'm not, right? I'm building a vertical in the same vertical, but smaller market capitalization opportunity. So it's about 60% Casper right now, and then the remaining DCA out of my budget is going to be between Filecoin and API3. So that remaining 40% is basically split up between API3 and Filecoin. Now, important factor here. Out of that DCA that I just mentioned, that does not include the 25% contribution that goes into dry powder that's in USDC every single month, right? So really that number I talked about is still only about 75% of the total fiat contribution divided over those figures that I just discussed of 60% in Casper and then the remaining 40% in those other two verticals. So again, my DCA is not necessarily a copy paste DCA for you guys, because your averages might be different than mine, right? Maybe you started Casper, you guys found us 3 weeks ago, and you're like, I started buying Casper at 0.07 and my average is 1.1, right? Maybe it doesn't make sense for you guys to average into Casper right now as much, as maybe there's other opportunities that you could either open or add to that need your attention a little bit more. So it's always going to be a little bit contingent based on that. But either way, like, this DCA right now is probably one of the few DCA opportunities I'm going to get over this bull run, because it's mostly going to be more and more limit-based ordering as the market goes on, and less DCA. So I'm taking this as a privilege right now to be able to DCA even into a handful of opportunities, because that hands-off approach is going to be a lot less opportunistic as the cycle does go on.
Maddie, instead of, we're doing a lot of telling here, can you do a little, showing here now? Could you flash this Casper chart right here for everyone and show what value zone it's in right now and how valuable, like, why this is such a crucial buy right now?
Sure. So we'll look at kind of the immediate price action, then kind of zoom out and talk about when it doesn't really make sense so much for Casper anymore at certain levels. And again, for some of you guys, you might approach this as more of like I'm a leverage trader. I don't really care about your accumulation, and you might approach this differently. But let's talk about people who are in long-term positions or building spot positions. So with Casper, one of the best things that happened for this chart was the V bottom bounce that we got back here in November of this year. Of last year, already 2025. So November of 2024 got a huge bounce. And it's not just so much the bounce, but it's the velocity of the bounce. So when you get something like a V bottom recovery in here, where you just see that buy volume swallowed up with such great demand, that's a very good sign, even if you see consolidation after that. So when we saw a sub $100 million market cap, which is what happened when Casper dropped below 1 penny, right? The low ended up being 6.286 cents, right? Just kind of exchange you potentially look at here. When you get this V bottom out here, and then we start building a higher low on top of kind of a previous area of consolidation. So from, let's say, August all the way through October, we had consolidation before we saw that final capitulation of all you little scaredy cats selling because of for-profit companies no longer building on a decentralized platform. And then we get the pop here, and then we start to see reconsolidation in here. So what I'm looking at is, when I zoom out a little bit even here, is you guys can see that there was a big support level that was built. And I'm going to grab the bottom of that support level here as well. And I'm going to get rid of the top one here just to create a little less confusion for you guys as a whole. So when you look at the support that was built here from June of 2022 through, let's just call it June of 2024. So 2 years of essentially support being built in this level. And then of course you got kind of like a top to this range as well, kind of like the 5.6 cent region. You have a big range that was built in here. When we came back and we retested this as a ceiling of resistance, I wasn't that surprised. I mean, I didn't expect us to immediately reclaim 2.9, 3.5 cents immediately. So us consolidating here above a minor level of support and below a major level of resistance is a huge gift. Once we've kind of reclaimed 2.9, 3, 3.5, the ROI continues to get smaller and smaller and smaller, especially when we look at some of the trim areas that we've discussed previously being 24 to 35 cents. That risk to reward continues to go down. However, I do believe that once we've reclaimed this pocket up in here, right, this very liquid pocket where we spent literally years of trading volume in here, that we won't be in there for very long. And I think we're going to reclaim the 5.6 cent pocket as support after that. So what I'm trying to take advantage of here is this entire pocket here. Basically, I don't care if the price is 1 penny or basically 2 pennies, 1 to 2 pennies. I'm very much a buyer down in this area because I know that reward won't be there anymore. Additionally, add on the fact that we are earning as current 15.5% APY in Casper. So it doesn't matter what the price of Casper is, you're always earning the same amount of Casper. So I always think about that more long-term, right? If I'm earning 20, 30, 40 Casper every 2 hours, which is, by the way, it's getting paid out every 2 hours, I always calculate that amount of Casper times some of my target prices. And then I start to say, wow, this is a huge opportunity, right? A lot of you guys look at the current market price and you're like, oh, I'm only earning, 10, 20 cents a day or whatever, $2 a day. And like, it just doesn't seem like a lot to you guys. But then when you take the amount of Casper you're earning and you multiply it by even just some of your trim targets, it's a massive opportunity you're potentially leaving on the table. So Casper is one that I'm not ignoring. Again, I'm one of those people who's very contrarian with my purchases. Zcash are going to be one of the best examples of that. Ignoring everyone's sentiment about privacy, ignoring everyone's sentiment about the new multi-year lows getting crushed, and just following the plan, right? So I'm doing the exact same thing with Casper here. I pretty much everything else that I purchased that I've told you guys has turned around and has seen some nice, pops well above those areas of interest. So I'm following the plan here with Casper. I do not care about the ticker being different than other tickers. I'm going to approach this with the exact same rules and tenacity I've approached every other opportunity that we've talked about on the show.
Trump's administration's crypto commitments pre-inauguration. So with the Trump transition team that was staffing the White House, like Susie Wiles, like Howard Lutnick, these people, if you are just a crypto person, if you invest in crypto, if you care about digital assets, all these people are crypto advocates. They hold Bitcoin or they hold other cryptos. So the people that were staffing the White House are crypto advocates. Now I'm going to save you the time. We got to, key administrations here, like, Secretary of State and so on. These people are now Bitcoin advocates or anti-CBDC or pro-digital asset innovation. And so we are seeing that across the board in the upcoming Trump administration, right? So it's very important to lay that out right now. What are they doing behind the scenes, or what I peer and what I look behind to see what might be behind the scenes? It looks like they are Bitcoin holders. It looks like they care deeply about crypto, and they care about some things like they don't like Elizabeth Warren, and they don't like CBDCs, those things, right? And so when you look at it at face value, I'm taking it at face value because they have no reason to lie. I don't know why they would lie about holding Bitcoin. It looks like they are all crypto advocates, right? And we've gotten to key figures like Marco Rubio and Tulsi Gabbard. They all care deeply about crypto, right? Let's talk about the promises that the Trump administration has laid out, and let's see if they will come through in Trump's second term here. These are all the promises. Establishing a Bitcoin reserve, forming a crypto advisory council, appointing crypto-friendly officials, supporting Bitcoin mining in the US, opposing CBDCs, enhancing banking access for crypto firms, creating a favorable regulatory environment. Maddie, how many of these actually come to fruition?
Well, I hope all of them, obviously, right? Like, I think that's one thing is like, maybe you guys have heard me talk about just like, and again, it's always about policy. I really just don't like put politicians on a pedestal. Like, I really don't care. They're public servants, right? They're here to serve me and you. And that's at the end of the day, like, you shouldn't glorify them. You should hold them accountable and expect nothing less than what they promise you, right? Mm-hmm. So that's really what it comes down to. Even if, Kamala Harris had won and she made all these promises, I would be like, you better come through, right? Like, you better do what you said you were going to do.
Right.
So it's the same situation here. Now, I would say probably out of everything we just discussed there, I think a lot of those, we've maybe even seen some early signs of, those promises coming to fruition, whether it be appointing crypto-friendly, council. I think that's something we've already seen Trump kind of organize ahead of Inauguration Day here. So overall, I think that's optimistically very bullish. I would say probably out of all the things we just discussed, the one thing that I think is maybe a bit of a lie would be anti-CBDC. I do not think that we are going to eliminate the central banking system. And just because we're ushering in a new wave of tech and a new way of making these systems more efficient, eliminates the central banking system. The central banking system is rooted so deeply, not just here in the US, but in other parts of the world as well. And I don't think the US government wants to give up control over the central banking system. And that's really what happens here, right? If you look at the Treasury Department, you look at the central banking system, and you look at the way that the Fed issues master accounts, they have their hands in all the cookie jars, right? And I don't think they want to give that up. So I don't think that Trump or really anyone else is truly anti-CBDC. What they really mean by that is we don't want to give up the existing central banking system and let it become decentralized. They want to have control and conviction over what they do implement and make sure that whatever they do implement, that they have ultimate control over, whether it be the Federal Reserve with their MasterCard accounts and maybe they issue them over digital rails. They want to be very picky about which digital rails that they issue them over and make sure that they have a permissioned network that only people who are connected to that permission network get to can transact over as a central banking entity. So I would say everything else makes a lot of sense. I would love to see, again, regulation come in that helps crypto forward and gives us more clarity and allows innovation to stay here in America. And again, now that we have primarily GOP control, there's very little excuse to not get it done, right? Like, let's roll up our sleeves, let's get to work. Like, there's really no reason that we can't get something passed. So I would say that's probably the one thing outside of everything else we just discussed, where if like we don't at least within the next 4 years get something, let's say 85% packed down, that gives us some good regulation and we can't get most of it passed, I would say that Trump has failed us for the most part when it comes to crypto, because that is probably one of the most important pieces that lets us as the public do our part, right? Because we can't say that it's the government's job to make crypto great. It is our job to do that, but without the framework and without the definitions and without the freedom to build, without the fear of being sued or having an enforcement action taken against you because there's not a lack of clarity, that's where like we have a little bit of that disconnect. But once that's in place, it's us as the public's job to make sure that we're pushing this forward at absolute maximum speed.
All right, a couple more things we need to hit on because we're already at 21 minutes here, Matt. So a couple more things we need to hit on so we can kind of get to the conclusion question here. John Dean offering to lead Trump-era probe into alleged crypto crackdown Operation Choke Point 2.0. So John Dean, very optimistic for the Trump regime. He just went up against Elizabeth Warren for the Senate race and lost, but he has been an advocate for the XRP community. So we love him. We love him deeply. But the initiative was to cut off traditional companies from banking services. And as we'll get into later, maybe Brad Garlinghouse has a clearer picture of that he can tell us. But John Dean is very excited for the Trump regime. Let's talk about Brad Garlinghouse, though, because this is, we cover a lot of what Brad G says a lot. Ripple CEO applauds Trump's impact on U.S. crypto growth. This was reported by the Crypto Times, but if you go to Brad Garlinghouse's Twitter, you can see this clear as day. And I might pull some things that the Times said from what they had to say, but Brad Garlinghouse is making the argument that since election of Donald J. Trump last November 5th, that things have only been on the up and up. Obviously, we've seen that in the crypto market. Brad Garlinghouse is calling this now the Trump bull market, which I think is hilarious. But you can't argue against the fact that once we saw Donald J. Trump elected, there was a big response in risk on markets. That is undoubtable, right? So a couple upcoming questions we might answer here is, what does that mean for Inauguration Day? Will we see a turnaround the same? I don't know. I don't really invest in news events. Buy the rumor, sell the news. I'm not buying anything. You can buy, and then it's gonna be a sell-off day, and you're gonna be like, what happened? I bought the rumor, and it's like, well, it's sold off. So I'm not gonna participate in that here. But a couple things Brad talked about in his tweet is he says 2025 is here. The Trump bull market is real. And here's a couple of things he talked about today. 75% of Ripple's open roles are now US based, while over the last 4 years, the vast majority of hires were outside of the US. Here's another one. We signed more US deals in the last 6 months over 2025. Of 2024. We're in 2025. He's talking about 2024. Weeks of 2024 since the election than the previous 6 months. So the argument he's making here is since Trump was elected, things have only been on the up and up for the for-profit company Ripple. And so what is this all leading up to right now, Matt? So we have John Dean here, very excited for Trump regime, going to attack people that attacked us, the new documents that came out. in the Coinbase lawsuit with FDIC, and I think it was OCC. These are the targets we need to go after. Or we have Brad Garlinghouse here, very excited for the Trump regime. The Trump regime of the administration, if you're boiling it down to crypto-friendly administration, I think you got that. I think you got that clear, right? But what does this moment mean like 10 and 15 years from now? What will they write in the history books? Maddie, is this moment we're seeing right now, will we look back 10 and 15 years from now and say this was the turning point for crypto in America?
I sure hope so. I think we can look to maybe even like the dot-com bubble to be a good example of this. And, we've definitely seen nastiness in crypto. I would say maybe let's almost liken the FTX collapse to kind of like the dot-com bubble crashing down, right? There was definitely a lot of crap that was in the system, a lot of things that shouldn't have been there, flushed it out, pointed out a lot of problems, scared people out of the industry, right? You've scared a lot of retail participants, and you've scared a lot of retail participants out for years. Like even though we're in a bullish period right now, is a group of retail participants that will most likely never return until you have indices that their financial advisors say, get into this crypto indice. And that might not be for 10 years from now. But there was a turning point even after the dot-com bubble, and that was a regulation, forward action that helped the industry grow and boom and kind of help better understand how we needed to navigate that space. So I hope with all my being that all of this that we're seeing, all of this bullishness comes to fruition. I think that Brad is hitting the nail on the head, regardless of it, being Trump. It's just literally not what we've seen over the last 4 years, right? It's literally just the opposite of what we've seen in the last 4 years. So, I'm very happy to see that, we are going to have more and more business here in America. The fact that they're hiring here in the U.S. makes me feel more comfortable that other companies are going to follow suit. And we're going to see a lot more hiring here in the U.S. and people are not going to be so afraid and feel like they need to, bolster their company over in the Bahamas or in Dubai and other places where they feel comfortable, and that they're not going to get, the rug pulled out from under them, because it's a lot of money and time and work that they're putting into these companies. So, I think it's overall incredibly bullish. I do think that it could be a very big turning point for us. And I really hope over the next 4 years, we get a lot of work done, because if so, America truly could be the cryptocurrency capital of the world, if we allow innovation to stay here. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that we continue to see more success stories like Ripple, where that resiliency is there and that desire to build here in America is here. And, I think that 10 years from now, if we continue with the same trajectory of what we're seeing even over the last, let's say, 4 months, there's absolutely no way that we can't have one of the biggest booming industries in the world.
I love that, Maddie. Team, let's cap it off there, but I do want to end off with some, good commentary here. And sometimes, Maddie, some people, we know people that don't even show their face when they talk about crypto stuff. I, on the other hand, I'm an open book. I share it with everyone. And I just want to give you guys some motivation before we go right now, because we are getting to points here with every passing show, Matt. It's like, things are becoming more expensive, my portfolio is getting bigger and bigger, right? And for us, that means, all right, letting off the gas and stacking stable coins. That's what it means for us, okay? And so, but we're also making money, or we haven't taken profit yet, but we're getting ready to make a bunch of money on crypto, right? And I want to give you this last thing here. I'm going to be super transparent here, team. I'll be super transparent, so never use it against me here. But I had a grandfather that unfortunately passed last year, and he died of cancer. Very unfortunate, but I rarely got to see him, and when I did, I always discussed my crypto investing with him. Maddie, I did it all the time. Every time I talked to him, I was super excited to share with him about my crypto investing, because he was well off. He made his money in real estate, and he was you'd want a grandfather to be proud of like that. And so, unfortunately, he died last year, and I knew I'd probably get something from his death. So I did. I get a lump sum of money. And, I just bought a house, and so I'm sitting here, I'm like, I could use this money to buy furniture, to buy things for my desk, to buy, new lights and new cameras. And I was listening to the last show from last week, the last after hour show, and I'm sitting there talking about doing things that only help my net worth. I'm just like, damn, it'd be so foolish to take that money that my grandfather worked so hard for in his life, I'm inheriting it, and now I'm going to go buy furniture with it. How is that helping my net worth? And so, team, I'm sitting here today, I'm like, hey, we talked about things we're buying. I am taking my grandfather's inheritance, and I am buying API3 and Casper point blank like that. Nobody's that transparent on the internet, Maddie. I just wanted to share that, because a lot of people, I noticed this because other people have family members that pass, or they come into a bunch of money, or they get a lump sum money, and they're like, I'm going to do this with it. I'm going to do that with it. And it's like, that's that person's life right there. They spent for that money. They worked hard and they made that money, and you're gonna go buy furniture with that? How silly is that? And so the point I want to drive home today, team, is like, hey, you might get a bonus at work. You might get, your boss might raise your salary, or this might happen. You might come into some money here. Remember those convictions you have in crypto, and chuck it into the industry you care about. All right. Do not waste that money on things that are not increasing your net worth. I know everyone's at a different stage in their life, and some people have, millions and millions of dollars, and some of us are like me, where it's like just got out of college, blah blah blah, trying to make it in the world. But it's like, if you have money right now and you are serious about crypto, right now is the time, Maddie. Right now, there's no other time than right now.
Absolutely. No need to flex, guys. Really. That's one thing that, I turned 31 last year. And it's one of the things that I learned from my early 20s is like flexing is just such a huge waste, because first of all, no one around you gives a shit, right?
Nobody.
Like that's even when it comes to like watches and stuff, right? Like if you like a watch, buy a watch because you like it and you enjoy it. But like 99% of people do not even know what you're wearing and they do not care, right? Like that's really what it comes down to. So like, buy things that are going to help you along in your future, right? Like, and the last thing I'll say is, no matter how high your conviction is in butthole coin, do not spend your dead grandfather's money on butthole coin. But that's it, guys. I really, really hope that you guys, take this year seriously. There's a short window of opportunity in front of us. Let's crush it.
Oh, it's going to be so great, team. And we're being transparent here. You guys saw our portfolios last week, and we are following suit here. We're putting everything we got here left. Most people, when I was in college, was like, wow, you put a lot of money into crypto. I was like, I don't want to be like you,
Right,
So
straight up, right? Like if you had said I put that same money into the stock market, they'd be like, oh yeah, great job, right?
Yeah.
But it's a new technology and they don't understand, and they think that it's highly risky. But once you understand it, like there's no looking back. That's how it's been for me for the last 6 years.
Team, if you got something valuable here, make sure you leave a like, and we will see you for the Ask Maddie show this Wednesday at 2:30 p.m. Pacific. So leave your questions down below, and we will see you guys then, team. So later.